Hello and welcome to another episode of the Don't Give a Ruck podcast, the 23rd episode. As you can see on YouTube, we only have 4 episodes available to watch at this moment in time. But if you go over to our iTunes channel or our SoundCloud channel, you'll be able to find all 23 there available for you to watch. And on today's show, we have a legend of both Union and League for you to enjoy, as former Wales and Great Britain international Jonathan Davies joins us to open up on his career, switching codes, and of course talk about his charity Velindre. Firstly though, Jiffy gave his thoughts on Wayne Pivac's Welsh squad for the autumn. Enjoy.
The squad on Tuesday, was it? The squad was named on Tuesday, and there was 1 or 2 surprises, but I think there was more surprising who wasn't picked, the likes of Jared Evans, Elliot Dee and Ashton Hewitt.
I think with Elliot Dee, I'm not sure what's going on there, but Isaacs has always been a good player, so they're always going to be pushing for that position. It's when you've got 4 regions, there aren't going to be many surprises, and I think it's always this who's eligible to come in. So you've got Callum Sheedy and Johan Lloyd, so they're going to try and come in, and they're good because they play well. They're playing the top of their game. They're playing in a club that's vibrant and on the up. And then they bring him in then to get him involved in the squad, which is brilliant. So that's key. But I think it's the first one, and the autumn's going to be really interesting because I feel it's very difficult for everyone at the moment. So I think team selection will be interesting to see if they're going to use this period now as a kind of development trial period, for the Six Nations, I suppose, and then going forward. So it's difficult times and very interesting times to see how things are going to get selected. And
we've been very lucky that we're now top seeds going into the World Cup. How lucky are we?
Yes, we've been kind of unlucky sometimes because we've played a really tough autumn series, and all of a sudden they go, we're down the pecking order now. You're going to be with some of the big guns, but just hope we're a bit lucky this year because you still could get a dodgy group, to be honest, a tough group. So fingers crossed. There's a lot of talent in Wales, and there's an opportunity to go self-belief, and also I just feel a little bit for Pivac as well, because once he's come in on the back of Gatland, it's a little bit like following Ferguson in Man United. Every expectations are high, and then all of this has happened. So he'll have to get everyone together in difficult circumstances, try and put a little bit of his own coaching kind of culture into it. And I was quite excited when he came, because I thought that Llanelli, by the best part of the region for Wales, and the way they were playing, I thought they played with a little bit more thought and creativity than we did. But ultimately, then it's international rugby is about results, and but the autumn will be interesting because of a variety of reasons.
And I saw on Twitter, I think the Blues put up a picture of Johan Lloyd, Lewis Rees-Zammit, and Callum Sheedy. I think it was the day after the squad was announced, and you asked why aren't they playing for the Blues. Do you think is sometimes a good thing now that players are going away at a young age and learning a different type of rugby, or do you still think they should stay in Wales?
This is the kind of $1 million question, isn't it? What's best for the player? For me personally, I think that the more experiences you get, the better player you are. So if you go into France, if you go into England, you learn a lot more, and it's good for you as not only as, because for me, especially when I went rugby league, yes, it was a different game, totally different game, and not knowing if I'd come back. But the biggest thing for me was going up to Liverpool and Manchester and Leeds, right?
Yeah.
And coming out to this bubble. So all of a sudden, you realise how small Wales is and how parochial it is sometimes. And for me, the decision was I was a better person, and I bet the decision making, and it was just a learning experience. So I think that going to Bristol, which is a great place, and going to Gloucester, when you see all of the Stephen Joneses and Jonathan Davies going to France, I think it makes them a better rounded person. But then it's that question then is you want to keep the Pro 14 strong. So you try and keep them in, and then there's money comes into it. And then when that comes up, education, or do they go to Hartbury? Do they go to Millfield? You can't stop them, from trying to better themselves. But ultimately, if you're looking at someone like Callum Sheedy and Louis Zammit, you think, or Ewan Lloyd, if you see that there's a special talent there, I think there's an obligation there to try and keep them in your region and trying to keep them in Wales, I think, because there's good schools in Wales. But I think sometimes, again, are they big enough, or to play rugby? And I do worry about the scouting in Wales, because all these players have left. So, but you can't be critical of it, because you actually don't know the true story of every player. But it's a tough balance, because I think they are better players when they go elsewhere. And they have a different outlook on life and different perspective on things. It's again, it most likely comes down to economics, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, before we move on to your career, John, we've got some questions in, if you don't mind asking from the listeners.
I saw that on Twitter. There's a few questions, so I was looking forward to this, or not, one of the two.
Well, firstly, there's a bit of a mixture. It is. Firstly, David from Pontypridd asks, if you could have played rugby union in any era for Wales, what era would it have been?
Oh, that's a tough one, actually. I enjoyed my era. I played with some great players, and I enjoyed my time. And looking at it, maybe they wouldn't have had the fun that I'd had in my period. Maybe obviously wasn't as successful as 70s and just the last decade. But I think looking at the 70s, the way they played was fantastic. And then, but then that would have been an experience to play with all those legends. But then looking at your Grand Slam winners, and I was lucky to be commentating on it. It would be nice to have that, have those results as well. And but you play when you play. You can't think of what ifs. Ifs the biggest word in the dictionary, isn't it? So I really enjoyed the time I played and the year I played and the clubs I played for. But it would have been nice to get maybe a little bit more success with Wales. So that's the balance of enjoyment and success. But it is what it is.
Yeah. And second question comes from Robert Haynes, who I believe is an English fan. Would you have liked to have played in the English Premiership? If so, which side would you have liked to play for?
Oh, I think it's odd because, again, it's all changed. Going to France maybe wasn't an option when I was playing. There was an option. I could have gone to Harlequins once. I think there was a rumour of maybe going to play in Harlequins and getting a job in the city. And that I think that would have been the one. If I'd have gone, you look at your Baths and your Leicesters and your Northamptons. They were big clubs and they were great to play. Great local derbies. So it would have been, yes. I think if I hadn't gone rugby league, maybe that would have the next step. That I remember playing against Saracens. On a kind of park field.
Yeah.
And cleaning some of the dog poo off before you played against them, and then you watch them grow and develop and be in the club they are, which is an amazing story. So we had great battles against English teams, and I'd like to see that happen again, just for the sake of the regions.
And finally, I think you saw this question on Twitter from Robert Morgan in Cardiff. Would you support a memorial to Black Welsh rugby players, which has been proposed by Cardiff Council, particularly honouring the great Billy Boston?
Well, I'm involved in that anyway because I think you're involved with code breakers, and I played with great black players in my union days and my league days. I've worked with them pre and post my career, and when you go up to rugby league, right, you see people like Clive Sullivan, Colin Dixon, Billy Boston. Then you hear the story about Roy Francis, and the awe that they're held in is unbelievable. You talk about your Gareths and your JPRs. You go up there, they're the same.
Yeah.
And it's Billy Boston has got a statue in Wigan. He's got to start him in Wembley, and he hasn't got to start him in Cardiff.
Yeah.
And it's not. And I think that he's just a great player. And I'm totally supporting Sir Stan Thomas and the Cardiff Council in trying to get that erected, and it would be brilliant just for the youngsters, to walk past and then say, look at them, and they wouldn't know who they are. But then they read into the stories and they says, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it? So it would be great to see a statue of them down the docks. Be brilliant.
And maybe one of you as well.
I don't think so. It started up there. You have roads named after you. So maybe I'll have a road in Samsara named after you. Who knows?
Well, let's crack on now, John, and talk about your career. Trimsaran, born and bred, as you just said. Do you remember picking up a rugby ball for the first time?
Oh, there was always rugby balls, in the area. It's a rugby village. My dad played for the village, so he was captain of Trimsaran first. So there was always rugby ball on. I lived on a council estate, and we used to. There wasn't any cars on the road then, so we'd get a ball and play on the road and get bounce into touch when it goes over the curb and all that. So I've always, but even then with cricket, we play cricket on the street and football on the street. So sport was massive, because we all come together, from the council houses, and then we were all there. So we played sport all the time. So I just enjoyed it, watching Trimsaran and watching them train, and rugby club became a big part of my upbringing. That's when it really started to get a hold of me.
Yeah. And talking to Myrion Davies as well, I saw once that he said, even from a young age, you play the game instinctively and would produce the unexpected. Did you think you were born naturally talented?
It's just very difficult. You don't think you're born naturally talented because you're a kid, and unless you come up against people, in current positions in Welsh teams from maybe 11 to 18, you got nothing to kind of compare yourself with. But not really, because I didn't get recognised, didn't have any schoolboy caps or youth caps. You just think, no, I just keep on working hard, training hard, and just purely enjoying it. And what you do is, with the school, we just worked on skills. We did, and it's simple. When the first thing you did was like, everyone's got to tackle. And I know now, everyone's doing these tackling drills and this and that and resting on the floor and leg pulls. But ultimately, you learn your tackle. And I always say this to kids, just get your head in the right position. That's the first thing you got to do. And then you've got to practice it as a young kid so you don't get injured. If you're tackling a 20-stone prop forward, you're not going to knock him backwards. You're just going to get him to the floor. But the important thing is getting your head in the right. So we technically we were sound because we learned how to tackle first and foremost. We didn't get injured. Then we worked on core skills. We worked on 3-on-2s, 4-on-3s, working on passing, length of passing, and just awareness all the time of what was happening in the game. And we played a lot. We played 15s every Friday. School 3 o'clock finish, and we played a game against all the local schools, and then we played a lot of sevens rugby, and then your instincts kick in then. So it was very, very enjoyable. And what it was, he set the standard in the village, because once he came to the school, everyone who left the school then kind of played for the under 15s, under 16s, under 13s. It's all changed at that era. Then we all played for the youth, and a lot of us went on to play for the seconds and the first. And now that's what it was. He said, "Oh, you can't kick, even if you're on, behind your own line." I'm thinking, this is mad. But what he did then, we learned to kick as we got older. But it was just enjoyable because he allowed us to play, but after working on all the skills. Because he knew then what we were capable of, because we couldn't just run around and and just do it like loose and no plan on it with no skills. So he appreciated if we got the skills first, then we could play any game we wanted to play.
And even when you were in grammar school, was there much pressure on you because of course, the fly-halves that would pass before you going through that school?
There was a little bit of pressure, I suppose, because they always wanted to be, the next Barry John or the next Carwyn James or the next Gareth Davis, and they're always looking to see, if anyone came through. So there was not really pressure on. the pressure would have come on, I suppose, if I'd gained any international honours, but that didn't happen. So no, just enjoyed, and we always played. If you think of it, it wasn't a big school, and then we played for our regions, Mynydd Mawr. That was only 3 schools. So when we went to play against Swansea, Ponty, Bridgend, Cardiff, or Newport, they'd have like between 15 and 25 schools amalgamated into one side. We had 3, so most of the time we got battered, and I wouldn't get the ball. So, but again, we knew and you'd hope then that the scouting would pick, the kind of maybe the gems out of the Mynydd Mawr side, but ultimately, the dominant sides usually get the majority of the selections.
And your development as a young player, it's a mini bump in the road when Connethley turned you away. I think they said you were too small, I believe.
I don't know. I grew up watching Connethley and going, watching them on a Saturday and a midweek game, and it was brilliant. It was all exciting watching them play in a great side. But you're trying to get, if you don't get any honours, you try and. I just enjoyed playing with Trimsara. I enjoyed my training. I enjoyed being with my mates, and just look forward to playing on Saturday. So then, you go for trials all the time, because it's not like now when you have to go through the academies and everything. You got to have a permit to play for any club.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed training and working hard, and all of a sudden, Llanelli, it was a bump in the road with Llanelli, and knocked me a little bit, because I thought I might have an opportunity, but there was plenty of knocks in the past, and I went on, and then all of a sudden Neath gave me a call against Ponty.
Yeah.
And the game went well. I enjoyed it, and then all of a sudden, it's like anything else. You just adapt to the pace of it. If your skills are good, you adapt to. It's just the next level is pace. You just adapt to the pace of it, and then. But unfortunately, I tore my cruciate ligaments. After in a Snelling Sems, so I had to wait another year then to get back into it. But it was good, because I met good people. I met good people at the club, and I met good people outside the club. In work, and it was just the patience that and the hard work, like people show now. You're in hospital, you're having rehabs now. I had to do it on my own, really.
Yeah.
So it was the patience. Having patience was the hardest thing, but just waiting to get things right, and knowing then that I was in Neath, so I had to perform. So I just worked that really hard and came back and certainly enjoyed it. That's the thing, the key for me. Wherever I've gone, I've enjoyment is the most important thing.
And the mental strength you must have had between the ages of 14 and 18. Obviously, you sadly lost your father at the age of 14, and as we said, you get turned away by Connethley, and then you're out for 14 months with a cruciate knee ligament injury. How hard was it to get over, such a tough start to your early career?
Yeah, I think nothing compares. Nothing compares to the death, of your dad at an early age. I think that kind of then resonates with you throughout life, and it kind of makes you the person you are. And it's just you dealt a bad hand. You've got to cope with it, and I think it depends how you cope with it. I think that's it. I think it's certainly character building. But it also gave me a motivation to be successful, and I didn't mean successful in the fact that if I don't play for Wales, I'm not going to be successful. If I'm playing for Trimsara, I want to be Trimsara and be successful.
Yeah.
And that at that particular time in my life, that was my bubble. I owe Trimsara a lot, so I wanted to make them successful as a youth team and enjoy myself. Then if I didn't go play for the seconds, or play for the first, and that was my bubble. So and then when I went further on, then the bubble got bigger, and I wanted to succeed in that. So it is. I think it is a lot of mental toughness, and it's a coping mechanism. And I think there's a lot of issues with mental health with different pressures, but I think it's how you cope with that, and who you deal with and talk with. But planning is huge as well. So I think it's it was really, really tough. And you look back at it and think, sometimes think, oh God, how do you get through it? But it is what it is, and it's you manage it at the time.
And one of Len's dreams, obviously, was to see you play at the Arms Park, which you did then in 1985, making your debut for Wales against England. What can you remember from the build up to that day and the day itself?
It was odd because it was played in April, which was a postponed game, and it is like a bit of a blur. Really, it's not like now where you get called up when you're playing in a region, so you got to mix with the squad like all these youngsters now. Just come in, train. I was on the bench out in France, and they said, "Oh, look, you've been selected this week." I remember there was a game before where they said, "Look, we're going to watch Malcolm Dacey, Gareth Davies, and myself." In the previous game, they're going to make a choice, which I think was unfair, really, because Gareth was established, Malcolm was established, and I was the up and comer, and I can't remember who the other two boys were playing against, and I was playing against Gloucester. So if you were playing against a weaker side that Saturday, and you play well, you're in, which is stupid. But I didn't do anything special against Gloucester. We won, I remember, and all of a sudden, it's a letter in the post there. You got to wait for your letter, and then you go into training, and it was all new. We only train like Monday, Wednesday, maybe and Thursday. Then you're playing on Saturday against England. So it's all kind of really rushed, and then you work on your lineouts and your scrums and a few other things. There's no patterns now and pods and all that stuff. And again, you just go out there and you try your best. That's all you can do is try your best. And again, it's stepping up to that next level again, and coping and adapting to the pace. And it was difficult first 20 minutes, and it absolutely flew. But the euphoria and the emotions are the ones that you remember. You're running out for that first game is ridiculous. Maybe the proudest moment of my career, especially, thinking of my dad. And then my mum was there watching, because she sacrificed a lot to driving me everywhere. So it was a very proud moment, for me really, and hopefully for everyone who'd been associated with my development, coming from Sarum Primary School.
Yeah, and I've never seen anyone as happy as you were when you scored that try. The smile on your face was just unbelievable.
Well, having not played for Wales at any level, I played for the Welsh districts. Just to play for them was a dream come true. But if it was the worst up and under I've ever put up in my life, and I chased it because I was embarrassed. And then you never know the pressure. Chris Martin was a very good full back, for Bath, solid, playing for the best club side, and he was really, really good player. But he just takes his eye off the ball, it drops, and I just fall on it. So, and at that particular time of the match as well, it was very close, and it just took us away. So,
I think you went back to Trimsarn Rugby Club the next day, didn't you, for a good drink?
Yeah. Took my cap back, took the ball back, and had a good swig in Trimsarn on Sunday. Then back to work on Monday morning. So,
was there any autographs?
I'd forgot. I supposed to keep the ball. I got the match ball, but then I was supposed to get the team's autographed. And in the euphoria of it all, and a couple of pints and going to the dinner on a Saturday night, I forgot. So on Sunday morning, me, my mum, my sister wrote all the autographs, down on the ball, and I don't know where it is now. Maybe it's in a rugby club or it's been sold to auction, but that's what happened.
And obviously, you become a regular in the Welsh side, and at a few of the Velindre dinners and whatnot, I heard you speak candidly about the tour to Tonga and Samoa, I believe, where there was a big brawl, wasn't it?
And yeah, that again, you go, they didn't go this last couple of seasons to Tonga because the IRB said they didn't fit that set the standards weren't high enough to go there, about the health and safety or something. When we went there, I think it's one of the most physical tours I've ever been on. I've been on a few of them. So you're going to Fiji first of all. That was a hard game. We won that one. Then we went to Tonga, where they're called the Friendly House. It's physical, the first game. You can imagine you're playing. You see the Tongans and the South Pacific boys. They're huge specimens. Like they are just built for sport. they are, they're brilliant sportsmen. But the physical side of it was extraordinary over there, playing on their own patch, and the hits that we endured. But you can't, you got to stand up to them. And there was a massive fight in the test match, and it was all the whole thing was crazy because King of Tonga was there, and rather than him come down to meet us on the pitch, we had to climb up the stand to meet him in our boots, and that was a bit odd. And it was raining and horrible, and then this game started, and there's just fighting all over the park. It was a massive brawl, and there's not a record of it on any video or anything. Oh. It's kind of it's vanished, and the fight was absolutely brutal. So I think Mark Brown was stretchered off, Adrian Hadley was stretchered off. I think everyone lost their fight except John Devereux. He won his fight. In hindsight, it's scary. I'd been to the hospital on the previous Tuesday because I was hit with a late tackle. And I got to the hospital, and when I got there, they just said, "Oh, there's no one here. Everyone's at the game." So I had to go back to the hotel, take a couple of tablets, and hopefully, and then I played on a Saturday then. So, but it was it was an experience. And then we went to Samoa then. That's when I played against a young Michael Jones on the wing forward for New Zealand, and New Zealand the following year. But it was again great tour. You go over there. It's a beautiful places, lovely people, apart from we were on the pitch, and then we just had a good time. We trained hard, we played hard, and we came back, with 3 wins, which was really, really good results.
Of course, that must have helped the preparation going into the '87 World Cup in New Zealand. Were the All Blacks on a different planet at that time?
Yeah, they were, and I remember, talking to Sean Fitzpatrick, that was their opportunity. They said they were number 1 in the world, but this was their opportunity to show the world that they were number 1. And I think they prepared far better than anyone else. And, they were on a different plateau. They were just, the whole thing was geared up for an Australia and New Zealand final, until France beat Australia in the semi-final. But yeah, they'd prepared. I think they were like semi-professionals at that level, not being paid to play, understanding the importance of sport, and the All Blacks, I suppose, to New Zealand. So they were kind of allowed to train, and then they had, gyms and time off work, and then they were. I suppose they were reimbursed. The companies were reimbursed to give time off, so they weren't getting paid, and they were. People say, "Oh, best team in the world, best team in the world." The All Blacks in the mid to late '80s were a sensational side, and I would say they would rank with any other All Black side ever. They could win dirty and hard, an amazing balance in their side, with great players. So it was a learning curve going to Australia, going to the World Cup, seeing how good they were. Taking it all in, and then we went back there the following year, and then that was a huge learning curve as well. So it just whenever you go away, you got to learn a lot of things, and I said that during that period.
And it must have been hard to realise what an achievement that you had finishing 3rd in that tournament, because of course there was no social media or anything back then. So
no,
hard.
Well, you couldn't even phone home, because you'd have to pay for the phone call home. And that was expensive, but I think going there was great because it was first one, so no one knew what to expect. The weather was rubbish where we played in Wellington. Then we went in Invercargill, Palmerston North. Then we went to Brisbane, and then Rotorua. So we travelled a fair bit. The thing, I think everyone kind of went in and not knowing, is an adventure, and. Nobody really grasped Rugby World Cup because we were still amateurs. And then when we got there, realised, how much better New Zealand were and how they prepared. And I think, coming to it, every World Cup, we saw, it was the best record ever by a Welsh team. I think that, the past, especially 2 World Cups, they've gone really, 3 World Cups really. They performed a lot better than us because the gap that between New Zealand, Australia, and us. No, New Zealand maybe, but us, we beat Australia. But I think Wales, in the last year, I've had an opportunity to win the World Cup. We would never have won that World Cup because we're so much better. But yeah, to come third was a huge achievement. And beating Australia, we picked ourselves up and we played really well at it. And I think it showed the potential that we had. And if we'd have stuck together, after the New Zealand tour and maybe embraced what New Zealand had done, I think that Wales would have had a good late 80s and a good early 90s because I think the talent would have been there.
Yeah. Well, you didn't. The next season, I believe, you won the Triple Crown and you missed out on the Grand Slam by 1 point, losing to France. And I believe that tournament was the same one where you scored that try against Scotland.
Yes, I enjoyed Six Nations because it was a platform to perform, and you have a few games where the whole nation watches you, and that's where you've got to perform. And yeah, we played really good rugby. The weather, the thing is, the 2 games we played against England and Scotland were good weather, and we played football. Went to Ireland to win the Triple Crown. Weather was dreadful, so we couldn't play football, unfortunately. But we managed to win now, and then we came to which would have been the Grand Slam game against France. And France were a really good side. In the 80s, they were the best European side with Blanco and Sella and Rodri, Dontrons. They had brilliant players, right? And but if the weather was nice, that would have been a real classic game because they came to play. We would have come, played. And I still think with home advantage, we could have turned them over that game. But they had a slightly better pack than us in those conditions, and we lost by a point. And seeing kind of the celebrations after winning the first World Cup, first Six Nations for Grand Slam for 20 odd years, it would have been special for us to win that, and maybe that would have gelled us. But then we still had to go to New Zealand the following summer. Would have been was that? No, that was 87.
88.
Yeah, 88 went to New Zealand, and again, the difference in level because of their prep was unbelievable.
And prior to the tour to New Zealand, which we'll get onto in a minute, you signed for Connethley after a few years with Neath, and you played against them in the Schweppes Cup final. Is it true they sent a card into the changing room saying, was it RIP or something?
Yeah, in those days, you didn't have any social media, so you just had letter telegrams and like my mum and card and everything. Oh, good luck and all this. So there's a big card, and I opened it up. There's a photo of me with a noose on my neck, and all the Neath players have signed it. And I've been there for 5 years. I didn't know half of them could write, to be honest. But but it is what it is, isn't it? And I knew. Listen, I didn't need a card. If I was caught somewhere, I was going to get a good shoe in, right? Good ruck. I didn't need a card to know that they were gunning for me. Don't you worry about that. So it just re-emphasized my focus on avoiding them, to be honest. And we changed the game plan. I turned them and they tried to get hold of me. But look, I was very fortunate to play for Neath and the Scarlets. And I went there because Thomas was building kind of a future for them, and I didn't know what I was doing. Where I was working, and I was a Trimsara boy, and maybe I wanted to play for Connethley, but we had a discussion, and I left then, and then he could get another number 10 in, so he forced my hand a little bit, but I wanted to play for Connethley because I was my hometown, and they were different styles, very different styles of rugby, and really enjoyed my time at both those great clubs.
And we touched on the New Zealand tour, which was after the Schweppes Cup final. I think I've seen you describe that tour as a bit of a disaster.
It was. I think a lot of the players didn't know what to expect. And having been there in the World Cup, I kind of knew what was happening. And even, we played Waikato first of all. I think Gats played in that game, first game. And I think when we should have put our strongest side in. I did play that game, and a couple of other boys didn't play it. So we should have played the strongest game and started with a win. Once we lost that game, it was like a real struggle. Then Wellington, Taranaki, Otago, so they weren't going to be easy ones. And then we went through, but we got annihilated in the test. To be honest, I don't think we'd ever come up against anything like that ever. So we were blown away, but you learn from it. My approach was I'm going to try and play better than Grant Fox. I'm playing against Grant. If I play better than him and everyone else plays better than the opposite number, then we'll have a chance. Unfortunately, individually and collectively, they were far superior than us, and they blew us away. But I learned a hell of a lot from that trip. You learn a lot about people, who you want in the trenches with you. Being somewhere that's really tough in an environment where they were slagging you off on the field, off the field, but you just got mental toughness to get through it. And when you have the opportunities to show that you're an equal, if not better, it was a pleasure to see New Zealand. I've always seen it when it's been chucking down and I've been battered with on the back foot. So that's one of my goals, is to go back there when the weather's nice, and then enjoying the country.
Yeah. Do sheep.
Because everyone says, "Oh, it's a lovely country." I said, "Oh, is it?" Yeah, lovely. When you get your ass kicked the shit out of, and then you stood behind a goalpost and he's pissing it down. It's really nice.
But I think you once described the Welsh team that toured to New Zealand as lambs to the slaughter, and I think one of the stories that encapsulates that was the calling up of Jonathan Mason.
Yeah, I just think it was one of those. Jonathan Mason played extremely well, so for Ponty, and it was odd because Thorby was sitting exams or something, and Steve Bowling, came with us. Steve Bowling didn't have a game, so I can't even remember who was playing full back at the time. I think I thought Ringo played a few games and everything. So it was just such a long time ago now, and he came along and then he got just back, he turned up and everything, and then he'd been on holiday and he'd been to Tenerife or somewhere, and then he was like, first time he got, and that sums it up. I think he gets the ball, he catches it, and he gets a hell of a kick in against North Auckland or North Harbour.
Yeah.
And then he's off, so it's just it was a shock. I think hotels we stayed in weren't great. I think the weather conditions are poor. We got really roughed up in the provincial matches, but this was nothing to anyone previously, because I sat down at lunch with Gerald Davis and they got absolutely smashed in '69. So it hadn't changed, and we hadn't prepared for it. And sometimes when you're out of your comfort zone in a different environment, you see who the people who adapt and who don't adapt. So, but again, the biggest factor was they were far too good for us.
And the final nail in the coffin for you in Union for a few years at least was the home loss to Romania a few months later in the December. Did you feel a bit of a scapegoat after that loss?
I haven't looked back at the video fully, as you can imagine. Why would I? But I felt that again, it was when you get a pack of forwards that can dominate, it's very difficult. And I think that we struggled, and that's why Wales now can compete with anyone because their pack is a match for any side, right? Yeah. Sometimes you see them creak, but everyone's creak, but they've got a platform which they can build their game on. Romania picked a massive pack, and after coming back to New Zealand, there was a new change. They just said, drastic changes because we got battered. They got rid of the coaches and they got rid of a few players. And I don't think that was the best idea. We should have consolidated and built on what we learned.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. So then, they made changes. And the Romania pack, they battered us that day. They had a simple plan. They had a big pack. They had a good kicking standoff. And, they just turned us and kicked the ball behind us. And we couldn't compete. And unfortunately, we didn't score from our opportunities and we lost. I felt I was made a little bit of a scapegoat as captain. But hey, we lost and I was captain, so you take responsibility. But what I didn't like was the fact that, they should have backed me up. The management should have backed me up, and they didn't. So, it was one of those things, a bad memory. But hey, it's only sport. It was amateur. Again, I was back in work on Monday, so hey ho, get on with it.
Yeah, and within I think it was 2 months you were you were lining up for Widnes. I think you come off the bench, and you said in the Rugby Code Breakers, which we just talked about on BBC, that it was mostly to do with the money, really, and securing the future for yourself and your family. But was it also down to the knee injury that you'd suffered when you were 18, and knowing that you may not have had many years left?
I think it's a bit. It's a bit of all of that. I think one was the disappointment of knowing that we weren't going to change in the Northern Hemisphere. So if we weren't going to change, we weren't going to, beat the All Blacks. As it's, it wasn't until 2003 where England won the World. They had an opportunity in 1991 maybe, when England had a good side. It just showed that if we would have changed quicker, we'd have an opportunity. So that was one thing, knowing that we didn't use our best resources to make Wales a better side. So that was one thing. I was really enjoying playing for the Scarlets. I really enjoyed living in Wales and, enjoyed my life playing. But ultimately, when someone comes in and offers you security, and also, my knee, I tore my cruciate, and I met the surgeon that had done it. And he said, "Oh, you're going north, there's rumours." I said, "No, I'm not sure yet. I'll make the most of that knee." I went, "Okay." And all of a sudden, I went for the money. It's as simple as that. Coming from a council house, my dad passing away and struggling through it and help, as my mum was a single parent. You always think of those times, and I've never scared of a challenge. So I thought, right, okay, it's one way of securing the family. Let's have a go at it. It was a massive decision, but maybe one regret, I should have stayed and maybe gone on the Lions tour 89, but then things might have been different. Then I might not have gone rugby league. I might have been injured and not gone on the Lions tour. So, but when I went, it was the hardest decision of my life to make that call, taking my family away from their home, and then putting myself in the spotlight again, because the biggest story was if I failed. So that was it really. It was kind of all those thoughts that went through my head.
Yeah, and I think the Widnes coach Doug Loughton once said that your move was self-financed due to the crowds that you were able to bring in. Did realize how big the transfer was when you went to Widnes?
Not really, no. I had no idea. I just looked at it. I just thought, right, I'm going up here. I just thought of me, really. Kind of me and my family. I was going to affect me and my family. Sorry about that. And then just go. And I didn't really consider nothing else. I knew it would have been a big story. But I never envisioned how big it would have been, because up here, in Wales was massive. And then when I went up there, it was just like pressmen everywhere. Never seen anything like it. And even Dougie said, Dougie Lawton said, if I'd have known it would have been this big, I wouldn't have signed him. So, but the crowds came. There was like thousands and thousands coming to the gate, and Widnes played some good rugby. And it was very difficult to adapt to it. But pushed myself hard in training. Played on a wing to start, and then kind of started to understand the game, because it's so different. The angles are running are different, and whereas defenders are coming from a different. So, it took me about 3 months to really adjust. But I really enjoyed it. I knew the toughest decision was to go to a good team. And break into that good team first. And Widnes were a brilliant team, and I was worried at one stage where I could fit into it. But they had such great players all over. But the decision I made, I couldn't go back. So again, like anything else, you work on it, and you try your best.
And there are countless standouts from your time in league, and some are really more stand out than your time in Union. Obviously, the try against Australia at Wembley, and obviously the clothesline try that you had against Canberra in the corner that you somehow managed to score, which I don't know how the hell you did.
Yeah.
But right up there for your own self-esteem, you had a charity game or charity shield game in Swansea, I believe, which was in front of the Welsh crowds for Widnes. Was that big for your self-esteem? And
it was odd.
Vindicated in going to Widnes?
It was amazing, because we had like coaches, loads of coaches from Wales coming up to watch our games on a Sunday. Even when they were going to watch Scotland, Wales, Scotland, they'd call back and watch Widnes on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And it was just incredibly interest that other people had. And it was on a television program called Scorio, which showed European football, Spanish, Italian, and then rugby league. So they could watch us play. But it was really special when they took the Charity Shield back to the Vetch. Vetch, was a iconic stadium. We played in Indian Park as well. But to come back with Widnes was brilliant against Wigan. And then I scored a hat trick that particular game, which it was great for me. And then the most pleasing thing for me was then when we came back with Wales. We played in the Vetch first of all, our first game, and that was kind of huge because a lot of us had gone up there and we mingled and were friends up there. But then to get together and to show maybe Wales how the players are developed in a different code was brilliant for all of us. And we had a great laugh as well together. We took a mickey out of each other, and training was hard and serious, but we had a bonding session because we'd all come from different parts of the country, and that was always memorable. It was just great blokes, showing how what they could do for Wales. And then it was the game suited me, and I think, and I really worked hard at it and trained hard, and because I didn't want to fail. That was the driving factor. Was I was doing it in the public eye, and I didn't want to fail, so I had to work hard to make sure I didn't fail.
And in an ideal world, if the game of union would have gone professional in the 80s, would you have even contemplated going to the league?
No, I would not.
So you didn't have? Did you have
any
interest in it at all?
I'd watched a few of them. I watched the Wembley finals. I hadn't watched a live game. And I went up to Leeds. He signed for Leeds. I went up to St Helens. I spoke to Warrington. And I watched a little bit more of it then. I was looking and I kind of enjoyed it. But why would you leave a game where kind of you've achieved your lifelong ambition of playing for your country to go and play a game that you've never seen before live, and then be an absolute novice and a target.
Yeah.
But with everything I mentioned previously, I thought, right, okay, we're not gonna. I think that was massive. The fact that knowing that the Northern Hemisphere could not match New Zealand, Australia for a few years. That was another factor, because you only get a short spell in your career, and you want to be successful and you want to enjoy it. And although you enjoy really playing for Wales, the worst part of it is not winning for Wales. So I don't think if we'd have been allowed to prepare better, I think we'd have been the more successful side. So all of those, and then lost to Romania, but then we beat Samoa. Then I was captain. So nothing gave me more pleasure than playing for Wales and being captain of Wales. But ultimately losing for Wales, as when you're a Welsh player, and all the players will back me up on this. Everyone goes, "Oh, someone's played bad in this." You don't try and lose for Wales. It's the proudest moment of your career, and every game you've got to enjoy it. So losing for Wales is so painful, because you feel you've left yourself down, left country down in a way. So when I went up there, it was nice to show that I could still play. And then when we came back to Wales, that we could play rugby league for Wales.
Yeah, and one of your last acts in rugby league was the semi-final against England, the World Cup semi-final against England. It was an amazing tournament. What sort of memories do you have from that time, as you said, with the Welsh camp in a World Cup, getting to the semi-final?
Just brilliant being with the boys. We did love being together. We had a great time together, on and off the field. We overachieved because we only had maybe 20 players to pick from. So we overachieved massively. We won the European Cup. We beat England in Indian Park, and then going to the World Cup, we knew we had to beat Samoa. That was the big game. And it's like everything else. All of a sudden, you look at the Samoa team, you've got Tugamala, Schuster, all these two Mavavi brothers who are bloody world-class players, and they knew that if they beat us, they'd get the semi-final against England. Martin Fire scored 2 tries. I think with TMO, none of them would have been allowed, and he knows that as well. But I think that would have been maybe a 1 game too far for us in Wembley against Australia. I think we'd have, we would have fronted up, but it'd have been 1 game too far for us to. I think.
And of course, the year you returned to Union coincides with your late wife Karen being diagnosed with cancer. She was looked after at Velindre Hospital.
Yeah.
And of course, now you're the president of Velindre. Firstly, how did you get into the role, and how amazing is Velindre? Because I know someone close to me, Kylie McKee, that worked with them, and
she's still there. She's still there, Kylie.
Yeah. So
I think we joined at the same time.
I see this stuff all the time on Facebook, and it's so amazing. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
I just think when my dad was diagnosed, the only place, we went to Cambridge, and my mum was away for months with my dad, and not knowing if you see my dad alive again. And my mum, was the strain that she went under, and but then when I went through it with my wife, we were in Cardiff, so it was easier because I had a 7-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And then I was still playing for Cardiff, and then for Wales. And when I came back, I didn't really want to play for Wales again because I was past my best. My knee was aching. I was slower. But when they call you, you can't say no. And I thought, I put in extra pressure on myself with everything else that was going on. But it's again, it's just a coping mechanism, and talking and prioritizing. Things you tend to get through it. I was approached to be a patron for Velindre, and I said yes straight away because you got to ask to do a lot of charities, and then you got to just pick one, haven't you? And I did that, and then things went from there. And I think I've been there 12, 13 years now, and they asked me to be president, and I've just kind of kept the awareness up there and tried to, build the awareness with all the team that's there. And, using I hate the word celebrity status to kind of, to grow the charity, and, with connections and bringing people like Gareth Bale and Geraint Thomas, and Matthew Williams has been there, Shane, you got Sam Warburton, you got Stereophonics doing gigs for us. And these are all kind of associated with us because they've been touched by cancer again, and that's the sad thing about it. And we're all in it for the same, for the one aim is to maybe get a cure for it. So it's when you see things like Matthew J. Watkins this year, and Wally Blackmore, who played with me for Wales and Cardiff, when you see these guys passing away way before their time, it just drives you on, I suppose. And those are the I suppose the names that are associated with it, but there's so many hundreds of thousands of people who have done so many great things, and I always thank them. But anything I say here can't thank them enough, to be honest. But it's ongoing, and hopefully we'll get a new hospital built. There's a few kind of issues with that, as usual. Yeah. But fingers crossed now. That's what Cardiff and South Wales deserve.
Yeah, and obviously the fundraising is a big thing to do with that. You've done a lot of bike rides, and isn't there a trip to China in the works for next year?
Well, there's a few things that's happened. The walk in China. They were supposed to go to Vegas this year on do bikes. That was Sam and Shane.
Yeah.
But so there are many things to do, and it's like anything else now. It's all on hold, and charities are really struggling now because raising money is a huge part of their success, and it's very difficult to do at the moment. So, but that's the same for everyone and every charity now. So, hopefully, when we get things back up and running, hopefully there's a bike ride to Mallorca next year. There's a bike ride to Vegas as well, and then there'll be a lot of different walks, and maybe the Wall of China. But again, it's all about creating a culture that people want to be involved in, and that's what we've tried to do. So when we go on these bike rides, it's all people from walks of life there, all have got their own sad story or success story about cancer, and we make it a life experience. And the bike rides are a great laugh. It's tough, and I've seen people break down and cry. I've seen accidents with people falling off bikes. But ultimately, the sense of achievement on the back end of it is something that kind of matches playing for Wales. I remember with the first one we did Yosemite National Park to Golden Gate Bridge, and helping people cycle through because the standards are very, very different. And then I remember the last journey, we'd all bonded and had a good laugh, a couple of pints in the night, and you got, smelling salts and like Vic on your nose next day, and ibuprofen and Barocca, and then you crack on again. And then I remember when we'd finish it, I went up on a little bit of a hill, and I looked over everyone's emotions, and I rang my mum. And it's the first time I think I answered the phone, and all of a sudden I broke down. I cried.
Yeah.
Because all the emotions of like what we just achieved, and the fact that I was doing it for my dad and my wife, and I just thought that this is something special that we're building here, and it's gone on from there. So fingers crossed they can maintain it.
Yeah, fingers crossed as well. And finally, what does the future hold for you, John? Because, who knows? Because are we going to see you on the telly anytime soon? And of course, you've got your own podcast as well, haven't you?
Yeah, me and Stubbsy. And I think during lockdown, it's easy to get people on.
Yeah.
Because no one's doing anything.
No.
But now when they're slowly getting back in, it's harder to get people on. So, but I'm enjoying that. It's something to do, and you're talking to different people all the time. I'm still doing rugby league, and hopefully now the Six Nations next year. I'm not sure if I'm doing any autumn tests because Amazon Prime have got it, and they're going in a new direction and trying to get new people. So it's tough at the moment, and I don't know what I'm doing. Scrum 5 is back on, so I'll have to watch that. And but I think there's needs of a balance in life. Yeah, you need new things, but I think there's balance and perspective on most things is important. No, you just try and do other things outside of rugby now, and hopefully I'll still have a job doing some rugby league and rugby union. But it is what it is at the moment, and let's see what life throws at me. It's I've enjoyed it up to now, so I'm not going anywhere soon.
Well, is it okay if we finish with a quick fire round, John?
Yeah, go on.
Brilliant. Firstly, who's the best player you've played with in union or league?
Tough one, that is. I think rugby union I played with people like David Campese. I played with Martin Johnson. But I think I made my debut with Terry Holmes. So for me, Terry Holmes is still, the best player in league. Oh, so many. But I think it's got to be Ellery Hanley.
Yeah. Best player you played against in both codes?
That's a good one again. If I went as a couple, I can't name one because there's so many. Again, you played against some great, but I think talented Campese. As a forward, again, Michael Jones changed the game, and then as a tough competitor, I think is Philippe Sella. And there's two in rugby league. There's Mal Meninga, a handful. I hate to play against him; he's massive. And then maybe the most talented again is a guy called Andrew Johns.
Yeah,
brilliant player.
Best match you've been involved in?
I think it's Wales Scotland game. I think they 88. I think they came to play. We wanted to play as well. So when you get two sides wanting to play rugby, it's brilliant to be part of. And again, just game management and getting that win was special for us. So yeah, maybe Wales Scotland.
And there's some special tries in that game as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Worst drinker you've played with?
Unfortunately, most of us were good drinkers. So, I tell you what, I go with David Campese only because when I was with him in New Zealand, I ordered a pint of Guinness or lager, and he ordered Malibu and milk. No, Kahlua and milk. I was like, yes, what? Kahlua and milk. So I go to Campo.
Joel, that's really funny because my next question, biggest troublemaker on and off the field, David Campese said you.
Did he?
Yeah.
Or maybe because I got him a pint of Kahlua and milk. I don't know. I don't know. There's so many of us. I couldn't. We've had, when you think of people like Rob Jones, Ringo, Kevin Ellis, there's so many of them. Like to have a lot. Martin Dermott was funny for Wigan.
Yeah.
I've been really fortunate. I have played with some great characters, and they've just made being in camp fantastic. It's just so many of them characters I could name. It's just they're brilliant. Oh, I love all of them.
Yeah, you'll have to get Campo back for that. You're gonna have to give him a message.
I will.
Finally, if you weren't a rugby player, what would you be?
Well, I started off as a painter and decorator, so I might have kept in that. Then I went to work in the open cast. Now that's closed. I think I'd have been in sales, I suppose, going into doing something in sales. I maybe that's what. Because I've throughout my rugby career, I've always worked. I've never been a full-time professional, even when I went rugby league. So I think it gives you a balance of life, and it keeps you in the real world. So when you're dealing with people every day, you have a different perspective from being in that bubble. Because being a sportsman, even amateur and professional, is a privileged existence and representing your countries in front of thousands is very, very special and kind of not normal. So when I've always worked and I've always had the views of people that I've worked with, so it's a brilliant balance in life.
Well, it's been an absolute privilege having you on the show, John, and hopefully we'll see you on the TV soon, and maybe get you back on in the future.
Fingers crossed, I'll be doing a lot more of it, and definitely come on again.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, John. Have a good day, and
cheers, bye.
See you soon.
Cheers,
bye.
Bye, bye.